Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Influential Oregonian, where we talk about important stuff.
All things history,
Oh, this is so much
archaeology,
easier with the
art,
script.
business.
It is!
We need a teleprompter.
We're falling apart here.
I'm going to have that squirrel hold up some note cards.
That's right.
You might...
He's gone now.
You might notice we're doing things a little differently this week. I know we weren't here last week because the thing we were going to do last week is the thing we're doing this week, and it didn't happen. So we just thought, well, let's just take a day off.
Allergies bad.
Yeah, allergies very bad, and everybody
That's the official story.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the official story.
everybody's been sick this past week or
Yes.
two.
But anyways.
like Jessica's been sick. You've been with your allergies. Melanie's been sick. But
I've been sick at heart because my little squirrel that I adopted up by the road got run over.
we're
great
gonna-
way to start the
we're
episode.
gonna cut
Well, yeah.
So what are we doing here today, Marcus?
Well, we are here for a special interview session. It's probably going to be a little all over the place, but we are here at Willamette University to discuss the archaeological dig that you've been talking about
That's
for the
right.
past, I don't know, it feels like a long, long time. Feels like months.
With you guys a couple months,
Yes,
personally
yes,
a
that's
couple
good.
years.
So we got to interview Kimberli.
Fitzgerald
Thank you.
and McBain.
Yes. It's been really eye-opening, really cool. You see them all around here, digging holes and looking for artifacts. Kimberli, I believe specifically, showed me a scrap of ceramic
Yes.
that is very rare and definitively tells us that Jason Lee's missionary was here at the university, because one night she was watching TV trying to go to sleep, and she saw this UK programming that talks about this kind of stuff, and I love stories
Yes.
like that.
Well, tell us a bit about the ceramic.
She said, oh God, I can't even remember offhand what she said about it. I just know that she said it was very rare, a cat's eye,
Yep.
I believe they talked about.
It came from a very small workshop in England, and it would have been imported to New York and
Where Jason
either
Lee came from, yes.
East Coast.
East Coast, yes.
And either brought along the Oregon Trail or sent around the Horn of South America to the Northwest.
Yes. Real quick, before we get into our long montage of random interview stuff and pictures and whatnot that we've pulled together, it's been a couple weeks. Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks, guys. How have you been?
Good. I've been here
I've been grading
with my
papers.
dirt, that specific dirt.
Oh, you've been great. Oh, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
End of the college weeks. When does that
Yeah.
officially end? Or is it
Oh,
already ended?
everything is due at 5 p.m. on Monday.
Okay,
so,
okay.
I'm a little bit under the gun, but I had to clear this out because I wasn't going to miss this for anything.
I know. This has been this has been an enriching
Yeah.
experience. I'm so excited that we get to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I've been busy working on episode 50 of Welcome
Nice.
to Oregon. So it's going to be drugs, fire, and cranberries. It's stories from Bandon, Oregon.
Oh, right on. And cheese, don't forget cheese.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, absolutely.
Yes.
We're going to add cheese. I'm almost looking at this project like, I kind of want to write a book on Bandon stories alone. And Jess was like, how do you decide what towns get specific episodes? And realistically, it's just whatever. If I accumulate enough stories and doing research naturally, and Bandon, the area specifically, is just one of those places that has a ton of history to it, and a lot of interesting stories. Drug smuggling operations, cheese, cranberry farms that are everywhere. I didn't realize how many.
Don't forget a private zoo.
Oh yes, the zoo, the wildlife. It literally just happened. That mess with the wildlife sanctuary.
That's right,
Yeah.
that one.
When I was 7 years old, I got to go and pet 2 baby white tigers.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've heard the news about that place recently, right?
It shuddered, right?
Oh, it's straight out of Tiger King. It's been quite interesting.
Methamphetamine
Kinda figured.
and millions of
Yeah.
dollars in small unmarked bills. It is just ripe stuff.
Yeah.
It belongs on the Penny Dreadful show.
Speaking of which, that is doing fantastic
I'm
lately.
having so much fun with that. I added a new one, the Rose Mortimer or the Ballet Girls Revenge, and it is the ripest, juiciest, most melodramatic, over-the-top thing I just love it.
This is the stereotype about Victorians.
Absolutely, yes. It is all of that.
As you can tell, guys, we wanted this to be a very kind of laxed episode. I mean, it's very unusual. We're all out in the wild. We had no script in front of us, so a lot of this is just going off the cuff, as you saw from my disastrous opening.
Hey, you got the
And we're
job
just
done.
glad you can hear us stammer together.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing more of it.
Yes.
Live and in person. We all exist together.
Live from Salem, Oregon.
This is Marcus Axe. We're reporting from Willamette University, where a horrible golf cart accident has killed 3 people.
Don't say that too loud. Those things are all pretty quiet.
It is alumni
Some
weekend.
very important alumni will be driving along going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Those weirdos with the microphones are threatening us.
Well, gentlemen, without further ado, do we have anything else that we want to stammer about, or are we good to get into the
I
montage?
think we're good to get into our montage.
Let's
Perfect.
look at some cool artifacts.
Awesome.
So I'm gonna kind of walk through what we're doing here, but I'm gonna begin with how we got here, if that's okay.
Of course, right on.
So we've been working on various archaeological sites in Salem since 2020. Yes, we began excavations in April 2020. Nothing was going on that month, if you remember.
Oh, no, absolutely not. What was it? What did you say? What month?
April.
Oh, that was just after my birthday.
Yeah, see, there we were celebrating your birthday.
Yeah,
it was great. So we continued.
in my house a lot.
We excavated wearing masks and social distancing, which
Right.
was extraordinarily challenging. I don't recommend it.
Oh, look at that.
So this is the Jason Lee house. So this is located at 990 Broadway Street near the McMiniman's Boone's Treasury. And so our research goal with this one was we wanted to find the foundation of the house. That's been our goal for all of these, is to geographically locate precisely where these buildings were. This one was built in 1840. And I'll show you a picture here in just a minute. And the exciting thing is you'll see some ceramic fragments, and there's some inside, maybe Penn showed you. They're called transfer print. What that's really helpful, that's very helpful to us because we can date when these were made. And additionally, there were also similar fragments found at Mission Bottom, which is the first place, and I'm going to walk through that history for you here in just a second, that the missionaries first settled in 1834. And so that helped us to confirm that the same people were living in these same places and, breaking stuff. So we then, in 2022, started looking for the foundation for the parsonage building. Again, this was built by the Methodists a year later, 1841. And this is over at the Willamette Heritage Center. You can see our units there, and that's a portion of the foundation. It was not brick. It was cobble and wood.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah. And so for both of these buildings, brilliantly, the actual buildings were saved in the 60s and moved over to the Willamette Heritage Center. So if you haven't done a tour yet, you should absolutely do that. It's pretty cool. So now I'm going to give you a bit of history.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. So the reason
Very on brand.
the reason the Methodists came here, it's multifold. So people don't often know this, but the federal government actually paid religious groups like the Methodists to set up Indian manual labor boarding schools in order to assimilate and educate the indigenous children, specifically in areas that the United States did not yet occupy. And this was in order to make it easier for the military to expand into these areas.
Right.
And so in the Oregon country, so 1834, it wasn't the Oregon Territory yet. It was a contested area, contested by, like, the French wanted it, the Russians wanted it, and of course the United States. So the Methodists, they didn't maybe realize it, but they were being used as a tool to help expand the boundaries of the United States. So the first place they built is in up here where Willamette Mission State Park is now. That's a drawing of the building that they built in 1834. They kept adding on, so you can kind of see where they were adding on. And right now, if you go visit there, there's frame structures which reflect what those buildings look like, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
And in the 1980s, archaeologists with OSU did some excavations out there. And why that really matters to us is, again, they also found ceramic, which looks a lot like the ceramics that we found up here in Salem. So this is Jason Lee, who was the superintendent of the mission to the Oregon country for the Methodists. And this building initially was known as Mill Place. So it became known as the Jason Lee House later, because this is where Jason Lee and his family lived, along with 3 other families. This is one of the houses that was moved over to the Willamette Heritage Center. And it was they relocated here because the Kalapuyan village, known as Chimichiti, was right here on the Willamette River, and they that was part of their goal, was to work with the indigenous, and being in closer proximity works better for them. So this map is a GLO map, and it shows where we're standing now, actually. The Indian Manual Labor Training School, that's the building footprint.
Okay.
It is referred to as the Methodist Institute because the Indian Manual Labor Training School was only open for 2 years, from 1842 to 1844. It was closed in 1844 because a majority of the children were sick or had died. And so at the time, they sold it to the Oregon Institute, which is the precursor to Willamette University. So this is the parsonage that over where the Willamette Heritage Center is now. Originally, it wasn't known as the parsonage, it was known as the administration building, and it was where the teachers for the Indian Manual Labor Training School lived. And it was close enough, so they would walk back and forth. This is looking at that same footprint on a current map of today. Okay. So this is a lot of the work that we do is we'll look at these older maps they don't often have scales, or it's kind of hard to tell, okay, we kind of know where we are, but where are we? So this is a map where we think it helps us locate where we're going to do excavations. And there's a current picture of the parsonage building. There's a drawing of the Indian Manual Labor Training School. This was a pretty substantial building, the most substantial building in the Oregon country for its time. It was 3 stories, and it had 2 wings extending off the back.
And that was in 1840?
Yes, it was 1840.
Okay.
It was finished, and the school opened in 1842, and it was operational just for 2 years as an Indian Manual Labor Training School. And I'm going to show you some maps now, which, bear with me. Sorry, we have that's the end. I'm going the wrong way. Please hold. Please hold. All right, so here's some historic photographs. So this shows Waller Hall, which is still here. And this is our school, the Indian Manual Labor Training School, again, renamed as the Oregon Institute. This picture was taken in 1868. I love this picture so much because it's the clearest one we have. And the other very, very cool thing about this picture, if you look closely, there's a tower here. It's the bell tower. If you look really close, this is a blow-up of it. It's kind of blurry. There's a bell there. So the Methodists brought a bell from Boston around the horn.
Oh, wow.
For the school. And it was too heavy, apparently, to put up there. And so they're like, we'll just build a tower next to it, which is a good thing. Excellent. They did that because the building itself burned in 1872, but the bell tower did not burn, and the bell was saved. And they decided in 1891 to rebuild the structure because kids kept climbing on it. As you can see, they're climbing on it. So they made it more substantial. But what's cool about this picture, this is from 1915. In the background, you can see a building. And so that building was the first gymnasium that was built. And that gymnasium was built in the same location as the building behind you where the theater is.
Okay.
That was initially built as a gymnasium to replace this older one. So And why that matters, I'm going to skip around, bear with me. So this is a Sanborn fire insurance map. I don't know if you've seen these before. I love these because they show building footprints. So what you can see on this map, Waller Hall is right there. That gymnasium building in that picture is right there. So then we know that that bell tower would have been about right here where my finger is. They wouldn't have mapped it. But the more interesting thing for us is that there are outbuildings over here. This is a barn, this is a garage, this is a pump house, and this is an outhouse. Our favorite, archaeologists love those.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is where we're excavating right now. So where these outbuildings are. And
Nice.
and so you can go over to the unit where you see Chase walking now, and Roy can tell you about it. We think it's the floor either of the garage or of the barn. It's a lot of cobble, which is what they would have used. And in the narrative and in my research, because of, again, in 1844, this was an active working farm. They had cows, they had horses, they had a barn. And this is where it was located. So that's exciting for us. This map here, a couple things. So this is actually a Salem bird's eye view. I don't know if you've seen these before. We love these too. So this one is from 1876. So our school had burned down, but it does tell us a lot about what the landscape was like. Again, this is Waller Hall. And this path here, it actually follows the ridge line. So if you walk over there, you can see there's a natural dip, which has been a little bit excavated out over time by the university because it was used as a football field. But the Mill Creek was actually initially a natural creek, and they modernized it and made it the Mill Race so they could control the water a bit more. But this shows us that there was initially a path going from, which is now Ferry Street, over here, and this would have ended at the parsonage. And so why that matters is that we believe that our school was located along this path.
Okay.
And this one, these are plans for Walton Hall, which was built in 1964, and that's the building that's right over there. So this building was built in the 30s first, and so it stood by itself. And then in the 60s, they built that building. So what you see here is a shadow plat of that path, this path up here. So we can try to, as my husband says, math that, and try and figure out more precisely where we are in space on this. And that's one of the things we're trying to figure out. So this is a site plan of the work that Professor McCreary, he was an anthropology religious studies professor, and he did some archaeological recovery, we'll say, in 2002. We can walk over and I can show you where that happened, but they were doing some utility work, and he found what he thinks was the corner of either the building or a corner of the foundation of the bell tower.
Oh, wow.
I'm tending to think it's the corner of the foundation of the bell tower, but that's great because it helps us place more concretely where we are.
Right.
Yeah.
And if, I don't know if Penn showed you, but inside the classroom there, we have boxes of the brick. He recovered some of that brick. And the brick itself looks very familiar. We recovered quite a lot of brick from the Jason Lee house, and it looks very much the same, which is exciting. So kind of like that ceramic, it helps us to confirm that they use the same. So this, I think, is the last thing I have to share with you. No, I have two more things to share. So this is one of the models. So my husband does 3D modeling. So
nice.
You know that picture, that the clear one showing the Oregon Institute or the Indian Manual Labor Training School. So he used a program, and again, we have Waller Hall there. So this kind of helped us to figure out generally, okay, where do we think it was based on the picture? It would be ideal to have 3 pictures from different perspectives, but of course we don't have that.
Right.
But this at least gives us a bit of a start. And then just another really cool thing to share with you is the article that McCreary wrote about the brick itself, which I just saw. Bear with me, right here. And again, if you're interested, you can read through it. But he published this in the Willamette Journal. And what I really enjoy about this is where I got those plans. But he's got some pictures too.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to track down the originals. He was just here yesterday. He's in his 80s now, but he remembers it just like it was yesterday, which is great. And more pictures. So it's just nice to know. The one thing he said he did do is he left the corner. He did recover quite a few bricks, but he did leave a corner. So that means that we can use ground penetrating radar to try to locate where that was. So that'll really give us a good starting point for next year. So to sum up, this year we're really looking in the outbuildings area. Again, I really hope we find the privy. That's where we find a lot of cool stuff. And then
Everybody
hopefully,
drops their iPhone down there.
right? No, like we found a ring in one once,
Oh.
like a gold ring.
Oh,
we
wow.
found a privy across at the
Somebody's-
Supreme Court. They
somebody's,
were like mad or something. Their wedding
Yeah,
ring.
yeah.
They're like, no. But the units over there, we're hoping to grab a corner of the school building. We'll see.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I love macabre history, so forgive my question, but I assume that there was never any like loved ones buried around the parsonage or the house or anything like that. No family plots or anything around the house, or.
Well, quite a few Indigenous children died. We know that they died while they were at the school. This is a research question that both we and the tribes have, is that we do not know where they were buried.
So it's very possible that standing beneath our very feet could be.
It's possible. Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'm required to do as the lead archaeologist is to obtain an archaeological permit from the state. And part of that permit, I need to have an inadvertent discovery plan for human remains.
Okay.
So that's what I have. So in the event that we do find any, then all work stops, and then we consult with the tribes and
Right.
LCIS, the Legislative Commission on Indian Services,
Right,
because
right.
there were Indigenous from all 9 tribes and honestly beyond Oregon that were sent to this school. So when the permit got sent out, it's the first one I have done that went to all of the tribes, because they all have an interest in the school.
Would you expect to find bodies so like I imagine you're not digging 6 feet down, but would you imagine that would be how far you would have to dig down to maybe find those remains?
So
or
one of the things that that we do, and what we have done at the City of Salem, and one of the things that the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde has been doing, is to work on a good methodology to help identify burial shafts.
Okay.
So there's actually a national firm that came out and helped us, not on this site, but associated with a cemetery for associated with the Oregon State Hospital. And that cemetery is on maps, but all of the burials are unmarked, and we weren't sure exactly where it was. And so we had ground penetrating radar done. At the time, the North Campus was redeveloped to confirm that they weren't going to run into any burials. And it turns out we also had a team of cadaver dogs, so dogs that are specifically trained to smell as far deep as 6 to 11 feet below the surface.
Wow.
And they were able to locate this cemetery.
Okay.
It was the dogs that found it. Isn't that remarkable?
It is, even for remains that are over 100 years old.
I highly recommend that you interview these incredible people. So, and the dogs. See if you get
I
them.
thought you were going to recommend that we interview the dogs.
No,
I have somebody new for the guest list.
yeah. And one of the things David Winkler and I have been discussing is exactly the best methodology to approach this. And the Lee Mission Cemetery is the cemetery associated with the missionaries, and it is where the oldest burials are. So one research question that I have is that perhaps the children were initially buried here and then relocated to the Lee Mission Cemetery, I just don't know. And that's one of the things we're very much on the alert for. We have a process. So one of the things that we did first before we did any excavations is the ground penetrating radar. So that would let us see before we even put a shovel in the ground whether there's evidence of burial shafts. And we did not see any in this area. That doesn't mean they're not in some other area, but that's part of what we want to do. One of my first projects was actually excavating in the Pioneer Cemetery. I was looking for the Chinese shrine. That's like a whole other hour interview.
Oh, yes, I believe, David talked about that, yes.
And so that was the first one I did, and I remember telling my boss, who was like, you want to do what now? You want to dig in the cemetery. So we did both magnetometer and GPR in the area that I wanted to excavate to confirm, because there are definitely burials all over, and they're all unmarked. So the area where the Chinese were buried, as with many cemeteries in Oregon and throughout the country, there's an area where the poor were buried who couldn't afford their own headstones. And so at least in Salem, they had separate shafts, and it wasn't just a big pit, which is what happens in some areas,
Right.
but they weren't marked. And what they had for the Chinese, they had a Chinese section, and they had one Chinese shrine to allow family members and loved ones to bring flowers, and they celebrate what's called a Qingming Festival, which is like our Memorial Day. Unfortunately, in the 60s, the city chose to destroy said shrine. Earlier that century, in 1902, our city council had ordered the Chinatown be condemned and burned down. So this was part of the Chinese exclusion era. And so
in the 1860s, you mean?
No.
The 1960s? They were
1960s.
destroying. Okay.
Yes, city of Salem, 1960s.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Alive and well, racism in the
That's
city.
unfortunate, yes.
So
Well,
part
in
of-
the 60s, I guess the 60s was a long time ago. I was born in the 60s, so,
So it wasn't
So it wasn't
everybody,
that long ago.
but that's what they did.
Yeah.
We have a picture of the director of the Salem Parks Department kneeling on the shrine in 1962. It was perfectly intact. And then we found documentation that it was a blight on the cemetery, and they wanted to clean it up. So it was covered up, and it looked like someone took a crowbar and tried to destroy half of it. But we were able to recover it. If you go out to the cemetery, you can see we've left it as is, so you can see part of it is still broken. But the Chinese we've been working with the Chinese community since 2018, and thankfully, just this year we celebrated, I believe, our 6th annual Qingming Festival with the Chinese and our mayor. We've had 3 mayors now, thankfully. They read a proclamation that basically they apologize for the bad treatment and promise not to do it again.
I have not been able to dig into the Chinese history. I keep saying I'm doing it soon, and I am doing it soon.
Well,
So
I've written an article. It's in OHQ, Oregon Historical Quarterly, so I can send it to David. And
yes,
send it
no,
to you.
absolutely, that'd be
That'll-
great.
Kimberly,
then
do you
you'll learn
remember what
everything.
issue that was?
It was winter 2022. We actually won an award for that article.
Oh, wow.
With the best article in
That was
OHQ.
the during the 2-year time period when I let my OHS membership lapse. So I'm
Oh,
gonna
it's
have to
still
go
out
back
there.
and get it.
Yeah, it's online. Yeah. So that's kind of all of it in a nutshell. And I'm happy to show you the locations that David, if you want to go see.
Yeah. There was one more thing, and it's a curious question about the existing buildings themselves.
Yes.
Do you imagine that there's anything left underneath them? Not that you can really get to them, but do you think construction has dug up pretty much all of that, or is there something still?
I'm an optimist and also an urban archaeologist. So I am 100% convinced that there is absolutely still evidence of the building underneath.
Is there any way to get to that, or is that?
This is why we're excavating where we are. So we excavate on the edges. This building had a basement. And one of the interesting things, and Gatke, I'm looking at Gatke over there, and in some of the boxes that we have in there is Professor McCreary did do what we call artifact collection during and after construction. So while we may not be able to see evidence of intact features the way that we would if they had never built these buildings, we can still learn quite a lot by the artifacts that are collected that may have been, a lot of times when they dig out for a basement, and honestly, throughout Salem, they're kind of lazy. So they would excavate out, make a big pile of fill, and then just leave it here, which is what we're hoping they did here, what we are actually seeing, and why we have as many artifacts as we do from that historic period. So again, while we may only find slim evidence of the actual intact foundations, which is what we found at Jason Lee and the parsonage, that's enough for us to say, okay, it was here. And the biggest reason that we want to locate it in space is very similar to the work with the Chinese community. It's about connecting to place and then working with the marginalized community to do healing here. Because what happened here has caused intergenerational trauma. And we would be then looking to the tribes, and we had a wonderful opportunity yesterday where we had members from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde talk about what that healing might look like. He read the names of some of the children that had died. So it's more than just a rock with a plaque.
I should probably ask, because I've heard this mentioned several times that many children died here.
Yes.
What was the commonality of their deaths?
Yeah, so if you really want to dig in.
I do.
So one of the things I did was a research project which culminated in a multiple property document, a National Register nomination for all of the Methodist mission sites in the Oregon country, so 6 of them. So that includes the ones in Salem, as far west as Astoria, east to the Dalles, up as far north as DuPont, Washington. But Salem was where the central mission station was, and this is where all the children were sent here. And so oftentimes, the first thing that they would do when the children arrived is they would rename them to European names. Often they would give them names belonging to the Methodist missionaries, which
I believe it was Christian names. They would re-Christianize.
Yeah, they would name kids Jason Lee.
Yeah.
They would cut their hair. They would force them to wear westernized clothes. They could not speak their indigenous language. And so one of the challenging things, as you can imagine, if you have kids they're picky eaters, and if they grew up with their indigenous food, they were also forced to eat, the European foods. And so a lot of them were suffering from malnutrition.
Right.
Their immune systems were also not used to the European type of diseases that were brought here.
A lot of those childhood diseases that are...
Yep. Malaria first was rampant during that period, which had pretty much decimated a majority of the tribes. There were some children who had been orphaned already. All their families had died. They had nobody left. So they came to here as orphans. And so that combined with, they called themselves a school, but they were forced to work. The children had very maybe an hour of actual education, but that barn I showed you, they had a working farm. The children were required it was divided into women or girls and boys, and the girls were taught sewing and cooking. The boys were doing the harder labor, working with the animals, planting and harvesting. But then the most difficult thing to read, so there were some complaints received back east at the headquarters where the Methodists were. And so they sent a Methodist investigator out to write a report to assess what was happening at the school right here. That was in 1842. And I read his report. He was, quite frankly, very, very alarmed at the conditions that they were being kept in. The biggest thing that was the most alarming is that children who ran away, and there were quite a few who did, and were caught, they were brought back here, and they were imprisoned, chained to a wall in the barn.
Wow.
And put on severely limited rations. They were also beaten, and some of these children died from their injuries.
Do you know an estimation of, say, the youngest of the children that were here?
2 years old.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, you did warn us that this was going to
Sorry.
be a ray of sunshine.
Again, the reason for needing to do some healing.
Yeah.
One of the things I just got yesterday from the Grand Ronde was a recording made by one of the tribal elders in the 1980s when they dedicated Mission Bottom, the state park. And that woman is reading some of the students' names. So the recording is in kind of terrible condition, so we're going to see if we can improve it. I'm like, maybe you guys could help with that. So we could hear it better.
Yeah.
But yeah. So again, we did some work with the Salem Hospital. This was, probably about 10 years ago, when they tore down the School for the Deaf. School for the Blind. Yeah, School for the Blind. I should remember that.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we did with them is oral histories. So students who had gone to that school and making an interactive, like you could push a button and hear them talk.
Right.
So that's an idea for here. We're being able
that's nice.
to do some sort of interpretation where you can actually hear someone like this woman reading the names. Yeah.
Was this a complete... Because I believe... Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe I have... When I've done research, I have heard that some of the natives came away with a more positive experience that could... Probably not necessarily here. That could be other missionaries. Was there any success to this place at all, or was it just all a complete failure?
That's actually a really good question. So, and this is something that came up yesterday in the presentation that we did with Reese from the Confederate Tribes for the Grand Ronde. So he did highlight two students in particular who went to the school who did not die. One of them named Sam, who went on to become a leader in a very different way in the Rogue Valley, the Indian Wars down there, leading the
stuff.
rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he took, he could speak English. He understood the workings of the Western mind. So he used that in that way to rebel. Another indigenous student who I apologize, I think his name was Joseph. He also survived, and he went on to become a leader of the different Kalapuyan tribes in the Willamette Valley, and was the one that the tribal elders sent in to negotiate treaties. Again, he wasn't rebelling, but he was trying to negotiate on behalf of his people to get something better. So yeah, two examples. They never succeeded from the perspective of the mission, the Methodists, who, their goal was to fully assimilate the indigenous, to make
Right.
them let go completely of their culture, to adopt Christianity. That never happened.
Yeah. We this has been a theme for us, for the content for the past month or so, is kind of understanding that we're at a point where a lot of what we talk about is just all the bad stuff that happens, and not that this was a good place, but we always try to glean any sort of positivity.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much darkness in history and in the world today, of course. it's always important to remember to look at the positive stuff too, and the good that can come out of stuff. And it's great to hear that at least 2 examples that went on to make more history happened.
Yeah, and I would also argue that the work that we're doing now, I mean, and I can see it in the Chinese community. It's been 5-6 years since we did that project. I think that whenever something extremely traumatic like this happens, it's very important for not only the indigenous community, but also for the Euro-American community to understand that history, to acknowledge that history, even though they weren't the ones who directly participated in it. It can help to better illuminate the marginalization that has happened. I think at least at the city of Salem, for at least 40, 50, 60 years, oh no, that didn't happen here. Oh no, we didn't have a Chinatown. Oh no, we didn't have a boarding school. I mean, we have Chamawa, but that's not really ours.
Right.
And even for Willamette, oh no, we didn't have that here. That's not how we started. It's like, oh no, actually, yes, that is how you started.
Yeah.
So to lean into that, to acknowledge that, to accept that responsibility, okay, that is part of our history, can make sure it doesn't happen again. So Professor McCreary had done some testing again in 2002 through 2004. So yesterday he was here, thankfully, and basically we walked around with him and he was able to tell us where he had done some testing and where he had found some artifacts. So we're going to follow up and dig again to see what we can find. But the most interesting place I'll show you is over here. Here, this is where he recovered a lot of the brick, which you'll be able to see inside in boxes.
Oh, okay.
But we were going to excavate there again to see what we could find. And again, we don't know if it's the wall from the school or part of the foundation from the bell tower. And then he also, these other flags are other areas where he was like, yeah, we found something over here. So the corner I mentioned, this one will be a little trickier. He pointed out that he thinks that it's right here, doing ballet.
Okay.
But of course it's under concrete or asphalt. So we're going to try to do some ground penetrating radar, maybe some magnetometer, because pulling up this is a big deal to the university.
Right. Yeah.
So, but last year they did some utility work. They pulled up that area right behind you, so we could just be like, don't you need to improve this?
And what's cool too is if you guys do find something, you can also talk to them about when they put in the concrete, put in a bronze plaque. Yeah.
Exactly.
To say where you're standing right here.
100%.
Yeah.
No. Ooh, I'm gonna write that down.
Thank you.
So we're gonna walk around here. You might see someone you recognize.
Oh look, we get to harass David.
So David is taking the lead on doing shovel test probes. Yeah. So these are going to help us figure out what we're going to do next year. So I think you had asked, is there any evidence of the building? Because this one, is in the way.
Right.
Our hope is, yes, that we might grab an edge over here. So this is what they're doing.
Looks like we might have to sacrifice an azalea to it, though.
Yeah. So this is Julian. Say hi,
Hello.
Greetings.
Julian.
Julian. He's a Willamette student, and he's amazing. He's been helping us do many, many things. And that's Kate, also a student. Hi.
Hello.
So David, tell us what you think about everything. Oh, that bucket's good, by the way.
Hey, John. Well, we've got some interesting finds over here. We found a big piece of blackboard slate. Some metal. I found a pencil eraser. Probably not historic.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Pretty old eraser.
From the 90s.
You also found the sprinkler system.
I also found.
That's definitely 150 years old.
Found the electrical line too.
Oh.
Yeah, you know that hazard tape they're supposed to put on top of the electric line? They put it on the bottom.
Wire.
Wow.
Oh no!
Yeah. So I was smacking away at it with the shovel, going, "Why is this root so stiff?
Why
And
do I
does
feel
it-
a tingling feeling?
and why does it feel like rubber?" Oh.
Well, we almost lost a co-host.
Well, the good news is it's well grounded.
We just found some braided old wire over here. I've sunk a shovel test probe. It's a mini, very quick way to test the ground.
Okay.
So I've got one of those behind the rhododendron here, right on the building, because we're thinking that the old Oregon Institute was just kind of offset from where this building is now.
Okay.
If you look at that sidewalk right there, Julian and another student, Hamish, were the ones that figured out that path used to run directly to that front door of that building over there.
Oh,
And so
okay.
this building was much smaller at one point, and I believe in the 1890s it was expanded out a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very cool.
that is my dirt. If you get in that dirt, I will come at you so fast.
I'm gonna take a souvenir home.
We'll give this one more pass.
You saw it all here? Threatened me?
There's Mariota.
So this screening process is where we're going to find most of our artifacts. Thank you, Kimberly.
David's in charge.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Kimberly. Do you guys build those yourselves, or is there a place where you can...
These came from Stony Knoll Archeology.
Okay.
They're a company that makes screens and other just kind of basic field equipment. This is the one that I've always used, but there's also hand screens that are miserable to use.
Right.
And yeah, Kate knows. And then there's these really luxurious ones that are up on big tripods and hang down, and those are so nice.
And why are you the only one wearing a yellow vest? Everybody must know.
Because I am a professional and it's force of habit, and it's got all my crap in my pockets.
Very nice.
You can see him.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
From behind the foliage.
You don't want to get run over by a golf cart.
Yeah.
That's right.
I drive them. I would imagine getting hit by one's not fun.
Also, just for like some more added, I guess, historical context.
Sure.
If you're curious. Right along here, there was the old wooden gymnasium. This side of the building wasn't built until 1938, and then this side wasn't built until 68.
Oh,
so
okay.
there was no building here up until the 30s, except for the Oregon Institute, which was
Right.
here. But that burned down in 1872.
What is that down there that I'm looking at?
So
That's where they
here
dug
is the
out.
basement.
There's a whole basement.
Okay.
Hi, Emily.
But yeah, so when the wooden gymnasium burned down in 1922, that's when they built this, which was now the theater, but it was the old gymnasium.
Okay.
Until it was converted to theater, and then that's when they input the path as well that went straight there. So there were no buildings here except for a cottage on that side.
Okay.
for a while.
Yeah, I see what you mean from where the concrete is, like basically you can see the path and then it ends and you have the concrete around it.
Yeah, we actually have the building plans from when they built Walton, and it shows where the old paths were and how they connected this to form this kind of weird, because that's like the perfectly straight path.
Right.
Whereas there's a lot more curve here.
Right.
It shows, like they showed how they were planning to do it, which is very interesting.
Between the two of us.
Perfect.
No, I haven't.
Well, I don't know what it is. Collect it. We're going to have to take it to the lab. It looks like, so we end up with, there are some soil changes that happen we call bisque. And it's a kind of a different kind of soil that forms balls. And that's what this looks like, as a large piece of bisque. Why don't you give it to Randy and have him take a look at it? There is some iron oxide that's in here that's attached to it. I'm not sure what it is. We'd have to get it cleaned up to really know for sure. Okay, great. Thank you.
We are sitting down with your name again?
Penn McBain.
Penn McBain. Okay, and you were, I believe you said, former president of.
I'm former president. I'm on the board right now as the secretary for the Oregon Archaeological Society. We are an organization that provides volunteers to archaeologists to help them with their excavations. And we've got about, 10, 12 people who've been volunteering on this particular dig, including Randy and myself are the dig site coordinators, which is a fancy term for supervisor for the dig.
Oh, perfect. And look who just walked in.
Yes.
All right then. So before I forget, because this was a very important question that I had just thought of this morning before I left. Why such a short, because you don't do this all year round, this particular dig. Why such a short window? Is it because of funding or permissions or a little bit of both? Or
So a lot of it is predicated on our ability to fund. Archaeology is expensive.
Well, of course, yes.
And we are an organization that relies on grant monies to a great degree. So if the grant monies are available, we can do longer seasons. In this particular year, 5 weeks is a bit longer than what we've done traditionally, with the typical digs being 4. So we did just a little bit longer this time.
Okay. Yeah, because I know you're supposed to be coming back in next year.
We come back every year.
Oh, you come back. Oh, that's right. You do. This was your what was it, 6th?
This is
year?
the 6th year we've been on the Jason Lee project.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to think, so we're not overlapping. I'm trying to think, and either Kenny or Finn, you can jump in at any point. I'm trying to think of questions that aren't overlapping, because I know we talked to Kimberli about what might be the most important find that has been on the site. Why don't we talk to you a little bit about your experiences with personally with the dig? I don't think we actually captured the importance of the
Of that one artifact.
Of that one artifact. Yes, yes.
So I can tell you that story, and then I can tell you a little bit about my experiences here. So last year, one of our Willamette students was excavating on the south end of the building and uncovered a small piece of ceramic. So this is a piece of ceramic that we had uncovered last season, and it's a very unique pattern. We've not seen anything that looks remotely like this. The cat's eye design is something that we weren't even able to find in the research books. And so we had chalked it up that we probably wouldn't know because it's a small piece. And we continued to have our students look for it, but we hadn't found it. And then coincidentally, one night I had a television show on, watching TV on a Time Team UK episode, and it happened to be on Burslem, UK. It's a city that is known for ceramics manufactured. There's dozens of these ceramics manufacturing organizations that are located there. And it happened to be that they were going through a pile of shards, and the commentator asked, "Why do you do this? Why are you trying to collect this?" And she holds one up in the air and she goes, "Well, for instance, some of these are so rare, and when we have them, it tells us a lot of history. For instance, this is an Enoch Wood and Sons, and it was only manufactured between 1840 and 1846. And it was the exact piece."
Yeah, that's right. You were the one telling the story off camera about this amazing, coincidence.
Just a coincidence to have a television show on at 10:30 at night that was recorded in England of the same piece. So then when our interns started to get into it, we realized a couple of things. First of all, Enoch Wood and Sons only exported to the United States to New York. Jason Lee and the Methodist missionaries came from New York. So not only that, but there is a Methodist mission training school located adjacent to where these manufacturing ceramics organizations are located in Burslem. So now we're trying to make the causal link between, did any of the missionaries go back to England for their training and then come back to the United States? So that's still a TBD.
Yeah, but the important takeaway from this was you didn't know that this was definitively the Jason Lee site before that pretty much.
Well, we knew this
solidified
was the Jason Lee site, but this is a piece of evidence that we now have from 1840 to 46, which is exactly at the period of time when they
Right,
were
right.
here. So it does create an interesting link between the export of ceramics. What they have here, what did they use? What did they have in their homes? What were the construction methods that they used for building their homes? All of that is a part of the archaeology. We want to understand the whole story, not just simply that there is an artifact that we found.
Now, would this have been, for the time, an expensive piece of ceramic ware to have bought?
I'm certain that it is if it's coming from England.
So that also, not that we don't have evidence, I'm sure, of the sort of wealth or, social status of Jason Lee, but this also kind of tells a little bit more the story about what might have been in the home.
Correct.
And basically the wealth of Jason Lee himself.
People wanted to have things that reminded them of home.
Right.
And so ceramics were one of the way that families could bring the East Coast to the West. And so it was very common for families, not just single men, but actual families when the women would come over, for them to have very expensive pieces. Much of the transferware and the porcelain that we have uncovered are in those homes. And so that's another indication that this was not just simply a bunch of single men, but that there were actually people that were settling in the area.
And we've been spending all this time talking about Jason Lee and the missionary, but we haven't really talked about who Jason Lee was and why he came here. Do you mind giving us a little bit of a biography of Jason Lee?
I can only give you limited information. I don't have a
Sure.
lot of information on him prior. What I do know is that he was a very dedicated missionary. And in some respects, there are texts that have been written about him that he was someone who was very tied to his mission, but sometimes a bit gullible and a little bit naive about the world in general. You have other ones that were part of the missionary community that were far more practical and grounded, but he was very much what I would call a minister as opposed to a practitioner.
Okay. Yeah, because I understand that Jason Lee has, from the outside looking in anyway, if you didn't really know anything about him on an archaeological level, a lot of his reputation being tied to such a controversial place has, in and of itself, been controversial. His character, he's been portrayed as quite, I believe, I could be wrong, quite a not a good person, because of what had been going on at his school.
So, trying to figure out how to say this. One of the things that I've observed in all of the research that I have done is that Jason Lee's shortcomings are probably because he was clueless to what was going on, not that he was an active participant in what I would call malfeasance.
Right.
I think that for Jason Lee, he was an individual who thought the best of people, didn't pay attention to what was going on, wasn't monitoring the situation. He wasn't a good administrator. He might have been a great minister, but he wasn't a good administrator. And so that part of the job did not get done well. With respect to what was going on at the school, understanding that disease was rampant everywhere, and that the majority of people who came in contact with Western society during that time died. It wasn't just at the school, it was everywhere.
Right.
The communities here with the Kalapuya, the reason that the Whitmans were massacred over in Northeast Oregon was because of disease. They had brought the disease to the Cayuse, and they were dying everywhere.
I did research that recently and dig a little bit further, and the reason the Native American Party came and slaughtered them was partly due to, yes, what was it? Was it was it measles? I can't remember which it was.
Smallpox.
Smallpox.
It was everything. It was
a-
cholera, it was typhoid, it was dysentery, and it was smallpox.
The culture of that particular tribe was they held their medicine people responsible, and because Whitman, Marcus Whitman, was taking care of him, they thought he was responsible, but it went even beyond that. It was mostly incited by, and I don't remember his name, but he was...
Spalding. Yeah, Henry Spalding.
Was it? I know he was a mixed race individual who was not happy with the way he was treated back east.
I know who you're talking about now.
Yes. He incited violence among the natives and basically said, well, yeah, you should kill the Whitmans. They're obviously poisoning you guys, which was not the case. So that was, I believe in my research, the tipping point. Had not been for him, there might not even been a massacre. There would be unrest and upset, but there wouldn't have been that push. Because not all of the, was it the Cayuse? It was the Cayuse.
It was the Cayuse.
Not all the Cayuse were involved in that.
No.
It was a group of them that were just upset. And rightfully so. A lot of people had died, but it
Hard
wasn't
to say
their
what
fault.
would have happened because, of course, it was their land, and
Right, of course.
they made the decision to expel the intruders or whatever. And of course, then it got spun as a big old murder, but it was really kind of more like a military operation. But that's a little off topic for us here.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
But it is all tied together because Jason Lee did interact with the Whitman missionary and stuff.
With all of these missionaries, whether it's Jason Lee or Marcus Whitman, which I'm not an expert on Marcus Whitman at all, there is an element of manifest destiny that is a player in this. The Western individuals were coming in and trying to superimpose their own culture on existing very sophisticated cultures.
Yes.
They may not have seemed so to the West, but their society had existed successfully for generations and had personal wealth. They were doing extremely well until the whites came in and said, no, you're not.
That was something that we talked about recently on the Influential Oregonian, that it's interesting because, the whites basically came in and looked at this and they're like, well, you guys are basically using, sticks and rocks. You're not advanced like we are. But in reality, I unfortunately haven't done near the amount of digging into Native American culture locally as I would like to. But when I did the very first episode of Welcome to Oregon, I was really excited to learn that the coastal tribes specifically had a caste system or a house system that was more similar to Europe than it was what we think of Native American culture because of the wealth that the sea and the land had brought them, which was very interesting.
Particularly coastal and valley tribes had, the Chinookan tribes up in Portland were incredibly wealthy. They had trade that was coming from all over the West. So, but again, that's off topic for what we're talking about.
Well, cool.
Yeah. But what has your experience has been with the Jason Lee dig? Have you, I'm trying to think of how to word this myself. Before you do an operation, of course, you set expectations of what you're hoping to find. What percentage of your expectations in the last 6 years would you say have been met?
That's probably a really good question. So we started in 2020 at the Jason Lee House, located a bit to the north of here by the Boone's Treasury. The house had been relocated at a point from the location, which was up at the Willamette Mission Park, and then it had come down and been established here. It had been torn down many years ago. The foundation was still there, and we have, in fact, found that. So that was going to be one of the big pieces. We wanted to understand where that was located. So that was number one. We took a break because of COVID, and we came back in 2022 and started over at the Willamette Heritage Center at the Woolen Mill. And here we were looking for the footprint of the parsonage. The parsonage was the building that was built to house the missionaries when they first arrived. And it performed the function of having a community center for all of the missionaries that would be doing their work in the community. The school came a little bit later. They started to build this around 1840. They completed the construction in 1842. And it only operated for a couple of years. So again, this is very much a work in progress, and we're continuing to look for the stamp. We found a lot of ancillary information. We have not found any foundations yet. But then we've only really begun to establish some of this. But there's a lot of domestic artifacts that we've found, including the glass, the ceramics, some other things, that show us that there was activity that was in this area that wasn't just simply a school. So we're encouraged by that. We continue to look. We were able to find the foundation of the parsonage when we were over at the woolen mill, which is great. That was a 3-year project to finally find it and be able to trace it. So we were able to get about a 12-foot piece of that wall that we were able to uncover. We have pictures in the book that will show that. I'm happy to show you those pictures.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the foundation of the Jason Lee house. So you have the brick wall, and we were able to find the foundation of the house. This is at the parsonage over at the Willamette Heritage Center, and so you can see the foundation that was running here.
Why would you, I'm surprised I actually didn't ask this question with Kimberli, why would you think that the house foundation should be made out of brick, but the parsonage, which you would think is a little bit more of an important building, why would it only be made out of lower grade material? Is it because the parsonage came first, or?
This did come first.
Okay.
Yes. The parsonage, so the interesting thing about the construction here is that what you ended up having was wood on both sides vertically with a fill of cobble in between. So it was a pretty substantial foundation, and that's what we were finding. The pictures that we have, you can see the wood, the degraded wood, and the cobble that is in between. So, and then this is what it looked like in terms of where we were laying out our units at. This is a picture of Jason Lee's house, and this is for the Willamette Heritage Center.
Okay.
Nice.
Now, probably a very important question to ask as well before we wrap up is, I guess, simply when does it end? You know, when do you feel that you've gathered enough substantial information that let's face it, we're all never satisfied. We all want to keep digging up more and more and more. But I mean, unfortunately, ultimately, there has to be an end somewhere. So what is your goals?
Our goal is to find the original Indian boarding school for now. We know we'll be back next year, so we know there will be at least one more season. A lot of it depends on whether we find it and if we have the funding available to continue it. So those are going to be two of the operating questions for us. When do you stop investigating history?
You never do.
You never do.
You never do.
You never do.
And that's why
it
we
evolves.
Sit together.
Okay.
You know, like we were talking about with Jason Lee's reputation. I've talked about before where a lot of people think the history we got is the history we're given, but especially when it comes to people, people can appear terrible or great in history until we find a journal that says otherwise. Somebody might have appeared to be this tyrannical person until we find a journal that explains why they were that way. And then you go, oh, they were supposedly doing it for a reason they thought was best. And in the context, maybe it was. You know, religious history has shown with certain restrictions, like if I remember, like shellfish. You know, shellfish is a sin. I can't remember in what religion. Well, why is that? That seems so weird and unusual. And what we find when we eventually dig up certain information is that, it's because there was an outbreak of just bad shellfish, and they were basically protecting the people from getting sick. So they go, okay, well, they're a gullible society. How do we frame it in the way that they're going to understand? Okay, God has told you that eating shellfish is bad. Okay, cool.
Right.
Everybody will understand that. They process that information a lot easier. So, I completely understand that that not only is there just never an end to information, but there's never an end to the want to find more information.
I think it's really important to remember that what we are trying to do with the Jason Lee Project is uncover the history of this very important chapter. And we continue to find more pieces as we get into this. And certainly, how far that goes, is that just Jason Lee? Is that the Methodist missionaries? There's a whole nother piece that could follow with the people who were part of the mission and what happened with them. For instance, we uncovered, there's something called an inadvertent discovery. I don't know if Kimberli told you about this. There's an inadvertent discovery that was located at the corner of Church and Marion when the city was digging up a sidewalk. And so they came out, they found a cache, basically a refuse pile that had been dug into the ground, and it was filled with artifacts. Over 2,000 artifacts came out of this pit.
Whoa.
And the interesting thing about it is we've got all kinds of maker's marks, all this diagnostic stuff that's taking us into the period between about 1880 and about 1900. That refuse pit was on the corner of William and Chloe Wilson's property, their house.
Okay.
Now, the dates are obviously not the Wilsons, but their son-in-law purchased the home and continues. So we don't know where exactly that is, but that is smack dab in a piece of Oregon history.
She did talk about how, because I asked about, well, what about underneath the building, and she said that what happened was they would just dig up these piles, leave
That's
the
right.
piles. Is that one of these piles, or is it something different?
No, this was a refuse pit. So back in the day, they didn't have garbage service. So what did you do with your garbage?
Right, yes.
You dug a pit,
Yeah.
you threw it in, covered it up, and you were done. That was the end. And we continually find these cache of refuse pits. And they are just a wealth of information. I mean, we probably have discretely 30 or 40 different kinds of ceramics. There was a whole bunch of medicine bottles. There was a Dr. Kilmer's swamp root kidney cure.
Oh, very nice.
Completely intact. Dr. Kilmer's swamp root kidney cure was one of the medicine doctors,
Right,
whatever.
right.
It
from
wasn't
that period
full,
of time.
was it? It was just a
No,
bottle?
it was an
Oh,
empty
darn
bottle.
it.
Fortunately,
Yeah.
it was an empty bottle, but we had a stopper in a cocaine bottle. Yeah. So Dr. Kilmer's swamp root kidney cure, you can still go online.
I love how she just glosses that over. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
The ingredients are still listed. It's a homeopathic recipe, and the main ingredient was turpentine.
Of course it was.
Oh,
Okay.
yummy.
We also we found a bottle that was a vermifuge, which is intestinal parasite remover. So you're getting all these kinds of bottles. We had Chinese ampules for Chinese medicine that were here that we found in that. It was just a wealth of information.
Kimberli mentioned that someone found a ring, like a gold ring, in an outhouse pit. I got to thinking about that and wondering if it might have been Margaret Jewett Bailey that threw it in there. Anyway, but I'll have to ask Kimberli about that.
One man's refuse pit is another archaeologist's treasure trove.
Absolutely.
Yeah, old medicine is something that has always been interesting to me because not only did we do awful things to other people, but we really did awful things to ourselves. Like, it's almost like if you took and said, I'm going to drink this gallon of gasoline to, clear out my body. That's essentially what they were doing. They were doing this stuff with, mercury and radium, and turpentine and all this other stuff that we just today look and go, are you dumb? But,
Well, I'm going to challenge you for a
different
moment
times.
and say, how many people eat cereal filled with sugar?
And that is a very good point, yes.
And they give this to their children because this is a good breakfast, okay? And so all these children are putting sugar in their mouths to start their days every single day, you know, whether it's Fruit Loops or God knows what else.
Chocolate frosted sugar bombs.
Yes, exactly. All right. And so this is something that someone has told someone is okay. It's good for you. You can have this. It's going to taste good. The kids will eat it. They'll get a good meal. And we all know what that means down the road. People in history believe what they know. They believe what they've heard. When they don't know it, in the absence of information, they're going to believe what they're told.
I think the most interesting thing about medical history, of course, not to divert from the main topic, but it's not what was done wrong, it's the things that were done right. That, you know, whether it be Native American culture or old European history or anything like that, where the things that they actually were taking was actually what they were basically supposed to take naturally. And stuff that has been brought into the 21st century from those old practices.
Yeah. Well, we're closing in on 30 minutes here, so we don't want to trespass too.
And I need to get back out
here.
and get people onto a lunch break.
Of course. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for sitting down with us. I always get excited to talk about the work that other people do. You know, you guys are heroes.
We're having a lot of fun. That's what I can say.
It looks like fun.
This is true.
Yeah.
And it really helps when you work with just a fabulous bunch of people. These people are just amazing.
Marcus wouldn't know about that.
No, not at all.
Well, thank you. Okay.
Have a good one.
Thanks.